women, children, people of all kinds, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to this dojo. It's your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freako 10, baby, bringing you guys episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Alright, back into our movie review. Now, on today's episode, I'm starting off by saying it's not uncommon for horror movies to follow the killer at work. It's a process that's interesting and even at times makes you fearful that there is a sense of empathy for a killer. Films like Maniac, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, and Silent Night, Deadly Night have all but done this. But never have I seen it done in the way that this film has done it, with the center focus being toxic masculinity. And what film is that, you may be asking? Ladies and gentlemen, that film is none other than American Psycho. But just because it has a new center focus, does that make the movie any good? Well, there's only one way to find out. Grab your chainsaws, your best business card, and your Huey Lewis CD as we talk American Psycho. Now, American Psycho, this is a film made in the year 2000. It's directed by a woman named Mary Harron, who also had a hand in the screenplay, which also was helped out by Guinevere Turner, who I'll get into later. But Mary's only credit before this film was a movie that I've never seen called I Shot Andy Warhol, so I can't really compare her work in this film to that film. But what surprised me was the fact that I didn't know this till later, but apparently this movie's actually based on a book of the same name by Bret Easton Ellis, which was published in 1991, which resembles the plot of this movie, with the only difference between the two being was that the book was told in first person by the main character, Patrick Bateman, whereas this is mostly centered around him. It's not really told in first person. I'll get into that later, though. I know the book was very controversial when it came out and was known for its violence against women subject matter, something that Bret has denounced, as it wasn't meant to be that. But I know at first that Bret was also hesitant about making this film because this wasn't the first time one of his novels had been adapted for a feature film, because before this there was a movie that they made called Less Than Zero in 1987 with Andrew McCarthy and Robert Downey Jr. and he didn't like the film, therefore thinking nobody wanted to see any of his books adapted into a feature film. That wasn't until Edward R. Pressman, who had his hand in some really fun films like The Island, Dr. Moria, and The Crow. He approached him about buying the rights to adapt American Psycho into a feature film, as he saw potential for it. It took a long time to get off the ground, though, as they went back and forth on who should be involved, with the original idea being Stuart Gordon should direct it, and Johnny Depp was originally going to be Patrick Bateman. Other considered were David Cronenberg, and he was going to have Brad Pitt play Patrick in his version. Then Mary Harron's film I Shot Andy Warhol is shown at the film festival, and they take notice of her talents and decide that she should take on directing duties. She had admitted to at first making an attempt to read the book, but didn't get far because she felt the book was too violent. But upon reading it, she saw it as her chance to comment on the 80s era and satirize the era of which the novel took place in, especially since she objected to a lot of the safe offers she was getting after the release of I Shot Andy Warhol. She objected to the previous scripts and brought in her friend Guinevere Turner, so she contributed to that as well, taking influence from the Mario Bava movie Hatchet for the Honeymoon when writing the script. Lionsgate had gotten word that the movie was in the make and acquired the film rights and gave the film a budget of $7 million, and they started getting their cast together, with considerations being given to people like Billy Crudup for the role or Edward Norton. Mary, however, was pushing for Christian Bale to take on the role, despite having never read American Psycho, despite warnings from people close to him that this would be a career killer. This only increased his wanting to do the role. The studio tried, though, to kind of push her away from him, as they didn't see star power in him at the time, and tried to get Leonardo DiCaprio to take on the role, being that at the time Titanic was the #1 movie in the world. This at first caused some resentment from Mary and Ben Edward, who refused to meet with him and almost exited the project, feeling that Lionsgate was only casting Leonardo for star power, feeling that he was too boyish for the role. This led to her being fired for a short period, and originally after that, Oliver Stone of Natural Born Killers fame was brought in to direct, as the studio also managed to talk him into getting Leonardo DiCaprio to take it on. And Leonardo and him reworked the script in an attempt to make things more psychological driven. That didn't get far, though, in writing, as Leonardo, right in the middle of writing, withdrew from the project as he was offered The Beach, and in fear of losing the teenage audience he accumulated from Titanic. Mary was brought in to direct the film, but the studio was still against casting Bale, with them pushing for people like Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and for some reason, Vince Vaughn. Guess Psycho 98 didn't happen yet. Eventually, though, Lionsgate relented, allowed Christian to be hired in the role with a small salary, and that the budget not exceed $10 million so they could compensate for not having Leonardo in the role. And once she got a handle on things, they began shooting in Toronto, with some pieces being shot in New York City. There was some frustration that Mary found herself dealing with as she kept butting heads with the cameraman, as she felt some of the ideas for shots weren't conjoining well with her vision for the story. She also found herself dealing with actual merchandising companies she incorporated in the film not wanting to be included. There was also protests that were trying to get the film to not shoot there, as around that time Paul Bernardo's murders had occurred, and it was revealed that he owned a copy of the book. So like all dumbasses, they were blaming the book for the murders, resulting in the team having to shoot particular scenes on a soundstage, as the people who owned the building were fearful the film would create negative publicity for the place if they shot in the particular building that the film took place in. Despite this, the cast really enjoyed shooting the film, Bale especially, as shooting continued on for a period of 7 weeks. Once that wrapped, they submitted the film to the biggest enemy of all, the MPAA, who immediately awarded the film an NC-17 rating. And the craziest thing was that it was not over the film's violence. It was all over a sex scene, which meant they had to trim 18 seconds from the film, which got an R rating. And what's crazy about this film, though, is that it did have a marketing system behind it, as they wanted the marketing to reflect the film's period. They wanted to reflect the 1980 excess that the film was poking fun at. There was this game that Lionsgate made, which was basically a stock market sort of game called Make a Killing with American Psycho, which they had spent over $51,000 to make. And there was also another marketing tactic that they had where you could register to receive emails from Patrick Bateman, or so you think, that would go over what has happened since the events of the film. And they would also go over interactions he would have with various characters in the film, a tactic Bale objected to, as he felt he was attracting people who were expecting a slasher when he wanted to attract the audience that were getting an intelligent satire, as he put it, while also, as he put it, he didn't want to attract the American Pie crowd. And I'm sort of like, Christian, man, I think the audience coming to this movie will know by looking at the poster it's not American Pie or Slap. Sure, the internet exists for a reason. We have IMDb. Surprisingly, Fangoria made it their feature cover story in their March issue. When that was all done with, the movie opened on April 14, 2000, despite opening to number 7 at the box office, as Rules of Engagement was still leading the top spot. It made only over $4 million its opening weekend. It slowly found its footing and made its money back, as by mid-May it made over $13 million. So I think in the same way Scream kind of helped with its word of mouth get its money back, I think the same applied here. And the movie actually got positive reviews from critics, as on Rotten Tomatoes says a 69%. Critics praised the film for its blend of horror and humor while not topping the book's vision. To a lot of critics it came fairly close, with Roger Ebert even awarding the film 3 out of 4 stars, praising the film for Bale's performance and gave praise to Mary Harron for not going the route of a slasher film. Praise also went to Harron and Guinevere Turner for what they incorporated into the film, with some criticism directed towards the fact that some critics felt the tone was a bit uneven, not recognizing that that was a little bit of the point. Nevertheless, it was a hit with critics, with the film forming a strong following from the audience, as on that side is an 85%, on IMDb is a 7.6 out of 10. Now, I heard a lot about this movie since it premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. I remember seeing the trailer of it and being like, oh, looks interesting, probably may not be for me, but they give it a shot. Despite that, the people saw the film were so quick to crowd it as one of the best films of the year, and despite the film not trying to be a slasher, I heard many filmgoers proclaiming it to be a slasher, a more sophisticated slasher, but I was interested by what they meant by more sophisticated. Now, I do agree with Mary and Guinevere's that this film is definitely not a slasher, and I don't think that people should sell the film like that, and I think they should have done a better job with the poster, kind of implementing more on Patrick's sort of psychological state, and more like the film is told from his point of view, rather than the poster of him holding the knife, because it looks like a slasher, I'll be honest with you. Definitely, I think Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer's poster definitely sells that side a bit more. It definitely tells you more what the film is about, as opposed to this film. Because I see it more like that, and with a little bit like Maniac. That's the best way to say it, with a little bit more of a small comedic side. But with that said, that doesn't matter. What matters is if I enjoyed the film or I didn't. And I did. I enjoyed the film. I definitely think it's an interesting film. And I definitely think it's a lot smarter than I think people have been portraying it as. I'll explain why later, though. But getting into the cast, with the cast of this film, we got Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman from Little Women. He was the voice of Thomas in Pocahontas. He was in A Midsummer Night's Dream. He's going to be in Shaft with Samuel Jackson. Yeah, Justin Theroux from Rami and Michelle's High School Reunion. Josh Lucas, he's been in small roles like Thinner, Fatherhood, and Restless. You have Bill Sage, who worked with Mary before on I Shot Andy Warhol. You also have small roles from people like Willem Dafoe from Platoon, The Boondock Saints, Speed 2, Cruise Control, yes, that. Reese Witherspoon from Fear and Election. Samantha Mathis from Ferngully, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Broken Arrow. Jared Leto from Fight Club and Urban Legend. I know Guinevere Turner herself has a role in it, Cara Seymour, but I'll get into their performances later. But get into the plot. The plot is basically, it takes place in the late 80s, 1987 to be exact, where we meet this guy named Patrick Bateman, played by Christian Bale, who works as an investment banker by day among a group of people who are in this sort of boys club as they talk about their wealth, and they're homophobic, and they start flexing their business cards. And from the outside, you wouldn't think anything would be bad for Patrick, as it looks like he has it all, despite having a bitchy fiance played by Reese Witherspoon. He's among a group of people who talk shit, carry the superiority complex. He sleeps with women around the office, and he lives in a nice house. However, when night falls, he is a serial killer, picking up prostitutes and having sex in them and killing them. And the movie is basically about the day in a life in a serial killer and how he operates, while a detective, played by Willem Dafoe, tries to figure out the murders and how they connect to him. As Patrick continues his murders, will someone bring an end to his murders, or will he get away scot-free? Now, while the story to American Psycho may not be anything new, because we have seen various movies that have been told from the point of view of a serial killer before, I feel like this movie works because it does some things different from other films similar, like Silent Night, Deadly Night, like Henry and Maniac. And as I do feel like this film offers some things in the script that are different from those other films and work for what they were going for. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I never read the books, so I only know stuff on a surface level, so I'm not going to be comparing the film to the book. That's not what this review is going to be. With that said, as a movie, I like how the film is not just about how a serial killer operates, but also I like how the film is about a serial killer in a society where he feels a superiority complex, and he's in a society and blending into it that you would never expect him to be, yeah? and just how the film explores that and how the people he works with have this whole my dick is bigger contest. It really shows where he gets that point of view from and how he fits right into that group and how racist and homophobic they can be. But it's not like it's doing it to attack the viewers who are like that. Granted, it's wrong in real life and it will always be wrong. But at the same time, it's doing it in a way, using it for a storyteller's perspective where it trusts the viewers where they know it's wrong. And how it plays into the toxic side of that group and how they're a part of it and how you kind of wonder why is he even doing these killings when he has it all. And I just love how that area is done. It can be funny at points too, with how that's explored. It can be on PC, so keep that in mind. However, I love how the film changes tone once the film's night scenes come on, and just how the film shows him in action, picking up these women, showing how he uses the smooth-talking, sexed-up side to get women and other guys into his grasp. But the film also makes it clear how soulless and a clear-cut scumbag he is, like the scene when he's talking with the homeless guy and saying all this horrible stuff to him about him living on the street, and then he kills him. So he's a really despicable guy, and at times manipulative, and that's where it does differ in particular from like Henry or Maniac, where they have this backstory to tell what they happened and why they are like this. This film doesn't do that, so you don't feel any empathy for Patrick. And when he goes into the killing with these people and how the film plays with the viewer at points, the setup where you think you get his way of thinking so you know how he operates, it at times fools you. Like the film sets up that Patrick has this sort of, I guess, characteristic where when he's about to kill people, he'll play a song and then pretty much use that to ease them into the environment to kill them so he can distract them. But then the film pulls the rug out from under you and says psych as that changes. So it plays with the audience and it makes Patrick unpredictable, and I love that. And he does have a sense of black comedy to him as well, as in various points in the film you do notice that he has this morbidly funny take on everything, and just how chirpy and energized he comes across, especially in his scene with Jared Leto and how he's in the rain jacket and just psychotic he is. It's hard not to laugh, and I appreciate Guinevere and Mary really pushing for that with the script to be the way it is and not selling out to studio demands, but pushing for the movie to have a more reality-centered plot. I don't know how true it is in the book. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments if that's the case. But as a movie, the script is really, really great. And I gotta say this, on a direction side, I gotta give Mary for really stepping into this film, taking it on, and adapting herself to the film and its subject matter, and really going headfirst in dealing with problems like those that I mentioned earlier, as her direction is really solid. As I look at the film from a directing standpoint as a slightly, and I say slightly, bigger budgeted version of Maniac. It's not as snuff film-like, as it's definitely a tiny bit more, what's the word, Hollywood in the directing, Hollywoodized, if that's the way you want to put it. But with that said, I still think the film has a great mood and atmosphere to it, whether it's the night scenes and how she works with shadows and darkness in those moments to replicate the sense of a seedy sort of back alley feel to the moments at night, and the atmosphere of a decaying urban environment where a predator is at work. She has a great eye for shots and her use of the camera with close-up, and just how she uses close-up shots of Patrick's face at points to get across how Patrick is in deep thought or looking at a particular situation and or moment, whether it's happy or sad. I think she works well with the darkly comedic moments of the film and directing those moments in a way that gives them some life. And when the kill scenes happen, despite not being all-out slasher blood and guts in the way of a Friday the 13th or even, say, Scream, I still think that it has its share of violent moments without relying heavily on gore that that are directed with some style. And definitely, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, the violence comes from what you hear and the impact shots, like just the blood flying on the characters' faces or the aftermath. There's a real sense of that there, and I really like that she did that, especially in the chainsaw scene, which I'll get to later. There's a tiny bit of slow-mo towards the end, but she adapts well into directing a film of this caliber, especially since she had last done a film of a different sort of genre, and I respect her for that. I respect her kind of testing the waters to take on something new, and she knows how to get a lot out of her actors and actresses. Christian Bale especially. I have to give a fuck you to Lionsgate for pushing Leonardo DiCaprio to try and get this role, and had no faith in Christian and were paying him less. I'm pretty sure those guys are kicking their asses for that now. Because sometimes the best thing to do is trust your fucking director. Because Christian did a fantastic job. He really dives headfirst into this role and goes all out with this character. He's got this devilish and chirpy side to him that really makes him stand out. And he's just psychotic and just... I have to give it, not just to Mary for really pushing him, but I also have to give it for Christian and how he went all out for this role, with him getting in shape, to tanning himself, and even staying in character when the cameras weren't even rolling. Hell, he even ran around that scene with the chainsaw actually naked with a sock covering his dick and balls. So... if that's not commitment, I don't know what is. And I feel Christian deserves his flowers for this role. And the rest of the acting is also really good. I will say this, though. The rest of the acting is really good, and I'm going to go down the list and talk about if they're good or not. I do think, though, because the film is centered on Patrick, it kind of limits the other actors and their acting abilities and what they can do in the script. Because there's sometimes that characters that enter the story, you really feel like they're built up in a way where they're going to amount to more, but they don't amount to much as you think they could. Willem Dafoe especially, and I liked him here as the detective, and the film makes you think he's going to be the one who's going to die or be the hero, but he only shows up for 2 scenes where he's talking with Patrick about the murder, see if he can get some answers out of him, and then having dinner with him later, and you think that's going to lead to something where he's going to come back and be like, oh my god, and it's going to lead to him being killed or being the hero, almost in the way, say, the dentist did it with, they find Corbin Burnson in the opera house. But he's never seen again, so why is he even here? Again, I want to repeat, I like Willem Dafoe. He's not a bad actor, and he's not bad in this role. I just wish he had more to work with here. Reese Witherspoon also does well. It's weird when you watch this in Election, where in both of those movies, she's a stuck-up bitch, because I'm so used to her playing the nice girl in, say, Fear, Cruel Intentions. But for what she was asked to do, she did well. I did get a laugh because she's so bitchy throughout the film, and pretty much playing the spoiled princess, living off her boyfriend's, nickel. And then later on, when she's breaking up, she has a breakdown, is crying. Kind of showing that she's not crying because she loves him, but because she's losing the fact that she can't live off his nickel. So that definitely got a laugh out of me. And I also don't mind that because she's not in your face with it. And I also feel it's a lot more annoying than she could be, so there's that. But Reese Witherspoon, for what she had to do, she did fine. I'm actually surprised she said yes to this movie, considering how she's very finicky about roles that she takes on. Jared Leto, as much of a piece of shit he is in real life, he played a good douche in this, and it makes his death scene all the more rewarding, so there's that. And plus, if you hate Jared Leto, you get to see him die. I won't go into that whole aspect because this is not the place to do it, but again, Jared Leto, hate him as a person, like his work. I do. I liked him in Urban Legend, and I liked him here. But other actors, you got Guinevere Turner, who plays this prostitute that he kills. girls, Chloë Sevigny, who I like, as this secretary that Patrick has, and there's a sense that Patrick may like her, thus why he spares her. Josh Lucas and Justin Theroux as a couple of colleagues that work with Patrick, and they do that well, not really much to say. For the douche roles, they do fine. I like the business card scene and how they're flaunting their business cards. That got a good laugh out of me, kind of showcasing the environment they're in. Samantha Mathis is this woman who Patrick has an affair with. She's fine too. Definitely seen her do better in, say, Super Mario Brothers movie. Yes, I'm saying that. And Broken Arrow. Hell, I even liked her in Ferngully. I'll take her in those over that. But she is fine. The other actors, they do fine for what they're given. Again, because the spotlight is mostly on Patrick, the actors are mostly held back from really expanding their characters. Thus why sometimes there really isn't much to say. Besides that though, the film itself, while not being the slasher that everyone makes it out to be, because it's not like it's a high body count, it does have its fair share of bloody moments, like the scene with Jared Leto in the apartment and he's playing the song and Patrick gets him with the axe. That was crazy. There's another crazy scene where basically he's having sex with these two women, and one of the women, he bites her lip off and chases the other girl through the apartment with the chainsaw, and right when you think she's gonna get away, he drops the chainsaw down the stairs and it goes into her. Margot Boccia has had her hand in films that I really enjoy, like Money Train, Carlito's Way, and Out of Sight, and I know she's working on Little Nicky with Adam Sandler. That'll be a treat to see how she works there. Those moments utilize a lot of practical effects and they all look really good. Great practical blood. I didn't notice any CGI. If there was CGI used, I'd love to know where, because I certainly didn't notice it. When they do show the deaths, like I said, it's not like a Friday the 13th where the death scenes are mostly focused on gratuitous violence, as they're mostly quick cuts. But I do feel it works for this type of film, as this is not meant to be a fun slasher. It's more meant to be a deep thinking sort of movie, especially with this character. But yeah, there is a lot to enjoy about this film. Again, it may not be for everybody, but it's certainly a film that I think horror fans looking for something different in their roster will get a kick out of. I've talked about the actors and their problems. That's one of the only other thing, I've already mentioned one of the cons, being that I kind of felt that some of the actors weren't given the time they needed, but there is one other thing I don't like about this movie, and that's the ending. It's not that it's bad, I won't spoil it, but I will kind of give a spoiler in a bit, so when this comes up, I'll have people turn down their volumes, but I didn't know what was going on. It's not like it's a bad ending, but the questions that it had at the end that had been going out throughout the film, I didn't feel like were answered, as it left me with more questions than answers. Because, spoiler, the film makes you think he imagined himself going on a murder spree, or maybe he did, but it was like a dream he had. I don't know. I guess it's left to the viewer's interpretation. But at the same time, I just didn't get it. And I even talked with other people like the film, like my cousin, and they said maybe it's a bit more clear in the book, but it just could have been explained a bit more. Because the film makes it clear that he's going crazy and killing people, but it never makes it clear he's imagining this stuff or not. It just felt very last minute to put this in there without any build up to it. And there's no clues and hints at this throughout the film. Those are two of my only problems, though, with the movie. Because bottom line, American Psycho is an American treat for horror fans that is more in line with Henry and Maniac as opposed to Friday the 13th. And it deserves to be in a category with those films. And it knows exactly what it is, and it succeeds at that. If you like those type of films, I highly recommend you check out American Psycho. You will get a good kick out of it. So when it comes down to it, the final rating for American Psycho is an 8.9 out of 10. And it deserves it. It therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. It would get a 9 had it just had the ending not thrown me a bit off. And they kind of gave more to work with the actors. But an 8.9 is still a satisfying experience for me with this movie. And I think a lot of other people will get that same experience. So yeah, that's my review for American Psycho, and next time I am going to do a review on Shanghai Noon, like I said, tonight. And because, Friday I'm going to be checking out Mission Impossible, I'm going to do a review of the first one. Recently, it's funny too, because I had someone in my comments kind of mention, remember when this guy reviewed Mission Impossible? I'm like, I never reviewed Mission Impossible, buddy. And he's like, oh, wrong universe. No, I'm not picking on that guy. I just find it kind of funny, because right when he said that, I was actually planning on reviewing Mission Impossible. So, yeah, there's that. So I'm going to be watching it soon. You'll hear my thoughts on this and prep for Mission Impossible 2, which I'll be checking out Friday. Be watching that tonight, getting my notes and filming a bit of it. I'm also going to be working on my review of Gladiator and a few other films. Trying to get through the April reviews before I move on to the next films. But that's what's to come so far. There will be some other stuff down the pipeline, so be on the lookout for those. But for right now, I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of American Psycho. I'd love to know you guys' thoughts on the film. If you enjoyed it or not, did you guys feel the same way you did about the ending? Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.